Welcome to Love the Idea Founders podcast, where we delve into the minds of visionary entrepreneurs who dared to turn their dreams into reality. Joining us today is Tessa Clarke, co-founder of Olio, the feel-good sharing app with over 40 million neighbour pickups, along with sharing 174 million portions of food and 12 million household items. Daniel, our podcast manager, dives into an inspiring conversation.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniel and I am the host of the Love the Idea podcast. Today I'm so excited to announce that we have an amazing guest, the co-founder of Olio. Please welcome Tessa Clarke.
Thank you.
So Tessa, could you give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself and also your app, Olio?
So I guess one of the most important piece of information about me is that I grew up on a farm in North Yorkshire, in the north of the UK. And the reason why that's relevant is because I had a childhood that involved an awful lot of hard work, which resulted in me having a pathological hatred for food waste. And so that is what gave me the impetus to co-found Olio. And Olio is an app that exists to tackle the climate crisis by solving the problem of waste in our homes and local communities. And that we do that by connecting people with their neighbours so they can give away rather than throw away their spare food and other household items.
Nice. So in building this app then, how did you go about putting a team together?
So we were really fortunate in that we have a really strong and clear mission. It's something people get really excited about, harnessing the power of mobile technology with community to have a positive impact. Yeah. And so our first sort of 4 or 5 employees were actually people who had used the app themselves. They were really passionate members of our community. They reached out to us asking if they could work for us, and that was how we got our first couple of recruits.
That's so interesting. As you started to grow, how did you convince the likes of Tesco, for example, that, this was a valuable thing for them to pursue?
Well, the really important thing for people to understand is you don't go out and sort of catch Tesco on day one. It's a multi-year plan of action, and it started with us just working with small local corner stores in North London. Yep. So we have volunteers who we train up, and then we match them with a local business, and they'll collect and redistribute that business's unsold food at the end of the day. So we worked out that model with small local corner stores. Then we built up to Planet Organic, which was the first recognisable brand that we managed to work with. At the time, I think they had about 7 stores in London. From there, we were then able to unlock Pret a Manger, and I can always remember signing that contract for just over 100 stores. Once we had done all of that, we'd really proven our credibility, we'd proven the model, then we were able to unlock a partnership with Tesco. But that took, I think, over 3 years, end to end.
So would you say that the app was built and kind of centered around everyday people, or more towards, those big companies like you just mentioned there?
So the reality is Olio does both. The app itself, the core user experience, is all neighbour to neighbour. It's about connecting me with you to give stuff away. And in some instances, I might have left my home and picked up all the unsold food from a local business. In other instances, I'm having a declutter of my kids' playroom and giving stuff away. So the core user experience is absolutely about how do we connect to people who live nearby in a way that is safe, that is easy, that is fun, that is trusted, that is reliable. And that's what we really, really obsess about all day long, is how we deliver on that. Yeah,
that's really interesting. So we thought sustainability, especially sustainable companies, would never be able to make a profit just because there was a lot of misconception around those days. Is that something that you also thought when you initially started Olio, or is that something that you feel has completely changed now?
At Olio, we really passionately believe that profit with purpose is going to be the new business model of the 21st century, and that we would go as far as to say that if you are a business operating, I'd like to say within the next 5 or 10 years, without purpose at your heart, without purpose at your core, you will lose the license to exist. And we're really busy proving that profit with purpose model can work. We're really proud to be a B Corp. We are big supporters of the Better Business Act, which is campaigning to change the Companies Act in the UK so that every business will have a responsibility to give consideration to not just profits, but also to people and planet and their decision making.
Yeah.
So we really do see that this is the direction that modern business is going in, and we're really enjoying helping to pioneer that and figure out how to make it work. But we absolutely are a business.
Yeah.
We generate revenues, and we get quite frustrated that people assume that if you're doing good, you must be a charity, but not particularly scalable, or if you scale and grow very rapidly, you're a business, but you're probably creating all sorts of negative externalities. And we think the third path, the one with profit with purpose, is the future.
Nice. And we did a little bit of research on you, of course, and you were in marketing and also kind of within that profit-driven environment. So how do you feel about creating an app that's actually for good, as you mentioned earlier?
I think it's long overdue, to be perfectly honest. I think we've seen far too much of technology being used not for good purposes. And it's not just technology, but also we like to use behavioural psychology as well. So a lot of the tools that are available through behavioural psychology combined with technology have been harnessed to essentially keep us addicted to our phones. And at Olio, we're trying to do the exact opposite. We're trying to harness behavioural psychology for good, to change people's behaviour so that they do live more sustainably. And our objective with the app is not to keep you in the app for as long as possible. It's to keep you in the app for as short a time as possible so you can get to where the real value is, which is that doorstep connection with a neighbour, giving something that you've got in your home that you no longer want a second life with someone living nearby who would like it.
That's really interesting. And are you finding that user behavior, are you finding anything interesting in that user behavior on Olio that's completely different to other apps? Or is that something that you feel is just the growing trend when people start to use the app?
What we're discovering is that behaviour change at scale is really hard. So it's much easier to sell people stuff than it is to get them to change their behaviours.
Yeah.
We have tried many different techniques and tactics over the years. I think one of the errors that we made in the early days was in terms of our messaging, we led with the planet first, then we would lead with the people impact, the community impact, and then we wouldn't really mention the personal impact about what it felt like to use Olio. We've now learned to flip that messaging on its head. We lead with the personal, that it feels good to share. So we believe that we're living in the age of what we call selfish altruism. So you've got to appeal to the personal. Then actually what people find next most motivating is the people, the impact they can have on their community. And then the planet is really just almost like that sort of fairy dust that we sprinkle on the top for that additional feel-good factor.
Yeah.
We really have found that people respond much better to behaviours that are going to have a positive impact on their community, which feels much more immediate to people, than the planet, which feels a bit more distant and far removed from them.
It's really interesting. And as you said, Olio is for the people. And I guess my next question is based around the sort of feedback that you received from people when you initially, started working and developing Olio, and how that feedback has progressed to where Olio is right now. Has that changed at all, or do you feel that it's, still relatively the same?
So we are overwhelmed by feedback from our community, and it's a real double-edged sword. So on the one hand, it's massively motivating for us because our community share back with us the incredibly powerful stories of the impact that Olio is having on them, on their lives today. Yeah. And that's really motivating for myself and the team. But the community also, they refer to themselves as Olioers. They talk about Olioing. They really feel like Olio is theirs. And when they have that very strong degree of ownership, it means they really hold our feet to the fire in terms of our performance and our level of delivery. Yeah. So we sort of our largest critic really kind of sits out there with the community who are constantly demanding better of us. They really do keep us on our toes, keep us making sure that we're really kind of delivering value consistently week after week after week to the community, continuing to improve not just the app, but the end-to-end user experience, and in particular, how we manage our community.
Nice. And I guess, how does it feel to have a community? Is it, I'm assuming it feels amazing to know that you've got a receptive community who's, Olioers, as you mentioned. How does that make you feel when you see, all this feedback, whether good or bad?
It can be really hard to grasp. It's sort of hard to believe that right now, even as we're speaking, tens of thousands of people across the UK are connecting on the doorsteps. I haven't met any of them, and they are sharing food, sharing other household items. So it's a really, really surreal thing to get your head around. But a lot of the time, actually having a community that is as large and is as passionate about Olio can be very emotionally draining, because they do just consistently demand more and better from you. They don't understand all the constraints that you're operating under. And they are very, very vocal when they see you doing things wrong. And of course, as a startup, you are moving fast, you're failing fast, you don't always get things right. And the community really do give us feedback when we get things wrong. So on a day-to-day basis, it can be quite emotionally draining. But when I step back and look at it, it's an incredible privilege and honour, to be honest, to have been able to have created this sort of scale of community and a movement, really.
Do you feel that the community feedback is feeding that growth, or do you have a vision for the app?
So the vision is very much driven by myself and Sasha as co-founders. And then in terms of how we execute it, that's where we get lots of feedback from our users. And in terms of the vision, sort of where we're heading, we really want to reinvent how we consume.
Yeah.
Because the model of consumption that we're all trapped in at the moment is one where we buy brand new stuff from thousands of miles across the world that is shipped to us at great enormous sort of environmental costs. We use those things for a tiny fraction of their lives, and then the vast majority of it, sadly, in some way, shape or form, ends up in landfill, and we're sort of rinse, washing, repeating on that model. The model that we really want to be the predominant model is one where when we want to consume, the first thing we do is we go to our local community and we utilise the resources that already exist. So we've done some back-of-the-envelope maths, which shows that a typical person living in a typical city in the UK actually has 1 billion things within a 10-minute walk of them. The problem is all those things are trapped in lots of people's homes. And so we want to use Olio's platform to connect up all of those homes, to connect up all of those things so we all have access to them, so that we can live in a much more cost-effective but also much more sustainable way.
Yeah, that's really insightful. How do you go about communicating all of these factors like you just mentioned there to the wider public?
It's a daily challenge. To be honest, as I said previously, we've learned that it's really important to lead with the benefit for you. Why should you want to engage with Olio? And the core benefit is it just feels really amazing to share. And it's one of those things you've just got to try it to experience it. And once people have had that experience, they're converted. And about 60% of the people who join Olio every month, so we've got tens and tens of thousands of people join us every month, they come to us through word of mouth.
Yeah.
So that's a really, really powerful sort of growth channel for us. And so it's almost less about how I describe Olio and how I persuade people.
Yeah.
More about giving our community the tools to spread the word about Olio on our behalf. And we do that thanks to our ambassador programs. We've now got over 50,000 ambassadors who are spreading the word about Olio in their local communities all over the world. We put them on digital pathways. They can download or they can order physical mailing materials.
Nice. So you've sort of got a bucket of your own influencer marketers who are kind of championing Olio as a brand. You mentioned earlier that feedback could be quite difficult to prioritize. Are there any other challenges that you find is affecting, the day-to-day growth of Olio? And how do you, position yourself to overcome that?
One of our greatest early challenges was that the first people who joined the Olio app, they hated food waste, therefore they didn't generate any food waste, therefore they had nothing to give away. And we had rather hoped that local businesses, cafes, delis, bakeries, etc. would use the Olio app to bring traffic into the store at the end of the day, and then they could cross-sell and upsell. But we discovered that businesses were far too busy with day-to-day operations to be messing around with an app, messaging with members of the community. So we were a food-sharing app with very little food, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, is pretty useless. So we solved that problem by taking the people who have lots of time and no food waste and match them with the businesses that have lots of surplus food and no time. And that's how we have kick-started hyperlocal sharing in Olio in thousands of communities across the country. And that's also how we generate revenues as well. So Tesco, for example, is our largest client. We redistribute from just under 3,000 stores each week. And instead of them paying a waste contractor, they pay us to redistribute that food.
That's really insightful. There, of course, now is an app for everything. And so do you see the future then being more community-based apps or, going in a completely different direction?
I do think there is a massive untapped opportunity for more community-based apps. We have a sustainability and a climate crisis, but in addition to that, we also have a loneliness crisis, a mental health epidemic, and a lot of people can use apps to connect with like-minded people, either in virtual communities or, in the case of Olio, to connect with people in real life on the doorstep. And that's what we are hearing over and over again, is people join Olio because they hate waste, they love our environmental mission, but they keep using Olio because they really love getting to meet members of their community who they would never have ordinarily met on the doorstep, thanks to Olio.
That's really great to hear. And I'd love to know then the accomplishments that you're proud of Olio accomplishing.
So I have to start off with our impact, specifically our environmental impact. So we have had over 165 million portions of food successfully shared via the app, and we've had 12 million household items shared as well. That has had an environmental impact equivalent to taking over 600 million car miles off the road, and has also saved over 25 billion litres of water. And right now we're doing less than 0.1% of our full potential. So that's really exciting. And then the social impact is just as powerful as well. So 40% of our community say they've made friends through Olio. 2/3 say that sharing has improved their mental health. And 3/4 say that sharing has improved their financial well-being as well.
It's really interesting data that you just shared. Is there anything that you do with that data to further amplify it to, the wider audiences?
So we do send a monthly impact report to all of the members of our community, sharing with them their personal impact, but also sharing with them Olio's impact from that month. For our business clients will include retailers, corporate canteens, school canteens, hospital canteens, film and TV shoots. We provide them with monthly or quarterly impact reports as well. And then we amplify all of that on social media.
Do you think that building an app like Olio has changed your perspective on sustainability in general?
Since launching Olio, I've been through an enormous personal journey of waking up, quite frankly. So Sasha and I founded Olio because we stumbled across a very specific, very enormous problem of food waste, and we set out to solve that problem. But once you've had your eyes open to that, you then start to see waste more broadly, and you realise that it's happening everywhere. It's entirely endemic in every single business sector. It's a fundamental component of our economy. And that has then prompted us to expand the aperture of Olio more broadly. So beyond just food waste, we're now trying to tackle the problem of waste of any variety in our homes and local communities. And so we do that by enabling people to give away household items, so books, clothes, toys, toiletries, stuff you don't want to sell, stuff you don't want to ship half across the country. You can lend and borrow household items, and I particularly love that because we don't all need a cat carrier or a camping stove or an air mattress or disco ball. And at this point in time, there's over 5,000 listings on the app of things that people are lending out to their neighbours and their community. And in due course, we want to layer on renting as well.
That's very interesting. Is there a vetting process as part of that? From one person lending something to another person, how do they go through a vetting process to ensure that the product is, right and it's in good quality?
So trust, safety, reliability. These are all things that are really core part of our user experience. So every person who joins the Olio app goes through a verification process. They have a user profile. We have user ratings. And we knock people off the platform when their star rating gets too low. And then when you are adding something to the app for a neighbour to borrow, so for example, I have lots of things on there right now, one of which that I lent out just the other weekend is a pasta machine. And you can choose who you want to be able to borrow that listing. So you can say, I only want people who've got a star rating of more than 4. I only want people who live within 2 kilometres of me. I only want people who've shared with at least 5 other Olioers. So you can filter out to get really high quality members of the community and allow just them to borrow your items if that is what you would like.
That's really insightful. And just to follow up on that question, is there anything that you, any product that you've actually seen or that you've heard of that has been a huge shock to you that's been lended from one person to another?
There is no shortage of random stuff that comes onto the Olio app. Some of the most strange ones, someone once gave away a working organ from a church.
Wow.
Quite bizarre.
Oh, an organ.
An
I thought you
organ.
meant...
Oh no, I did not mean a body organ. No, absolutely not. We've not got that, thank goodness. Honestly, if you can think about it, it has been given away on Olio.
That's really interesting. And I'd love to also kind of dive into the sort of apps that you use on a daily basis. So obviously using Olio, are there any other kind of complementary apps that you use?
So Google Maps is my go-to because I'm very navigationally challenged. So that is used multiple times per day. I use Overcast for podcasts because I'm an obsessive podcast listener. And so I like to be able to sort of manage the queuing of my podcasts. I have a couple of breathing apps because I aspire to be better at breath work and to do some breath work every single day. I have the Aura Ring. So again, that gives me lots of great data about my well-being. Few banking apps, and I try not to spend much time on social media because it's a massive time sink. Haven't got time for that. So yeah, that's probably my roundup of apps.
Nice, that's great to hear. And I guess, touching on your answer there, how do you go about managing your time with everything that you've got going on? It seems like you've got a really busy schedule, and it'd just be great to kind of understand how you go about mapping out your days and your months and your weeks in advance.
Well, this might sound like a slightly strange answer, but I am many factors more efficient now, post-kids, than I was before kids. But I tend to lead a fairly structured day, kind of get up early, do a bit of work, then get the kids ready for school, walk them to school, so get some steps in. Then I will do some form of workout, and then I don't actually kind of start my working day until around 10 a.m. But I find that I've had such high quality thinking time when I've gone for a walk before getting to my desk, and I often listen to podcasts when I work out or walk as well. Yeah. So that's the most precious time of my day, is that sort of 9 till 10 a.m. And then the rest of the day is pretty stacked up with meetings, and then must always stop at 6 to have dinner with the kids. And then sometimes I'll continue working later on or sometimes not.
That seems like a really efficient structure to have, especially with having kids and them just demanding all your time. It's really great that you've got a very robust structure to help manage your days. I've got one more question for you, and it's based around advice for future entrepreneurs and people who are thinking of starting their own apps based around sustainability. And we'd love to know what the best advice is that you would give them in going across this personal journey.
Yeah. So a couple of things. First of all, please do sort of get going, solving some of humanity's largest problems. There is no shortage of enormous problems that need solving. So find a problem that you feel really, really passionately about and crack on figuring out how you can solve it. What you need to be is in love with the problem that you're trying to solve, and the particular idea that you have might or might not be the right solution to that. So you need to be quite sort of solution agnostic. And actually, I'd really encourage you to figure out a low-cost or no-cost way of testing your core hypotheses, perhaps using existing platforms or existing tools, so that you then know what you actually want to spec, what you actually want to scope, what you actually want to build. And that will save you a lot of time and a lot of money, and it will significantly increase the probability of success for the app that you do eventually build.
Awesome. That is really great advice. Thank you so much for that, Tessa. It's been great to sort of dive into Olio a little bit deeper and also understand the inner workings of the day-to-day. And, the guys at the Lovely Idea would love to thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.